Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're cutting through the daily headlines and really the fog of war to decode a highly revealing event, that massive explosion at the Vyshneve depot. We're going to dive into the data to unpack the hidden architecture of shadow logistics and show you exactly how it ties into some massive international compliance failures. Because this isn't just a story about a single blast, it's practically a masterclass in how invisible systems operate right under our noses.
So let's start with a surface-level event. On the night of July 6, 2026, this massive explosion rocked the Vyshneve depot in the Kyiv region. We're talking toxic fallout and the emergency evacuation of over 600 civilians from Vyshneve and Sviatoshen. Now, naturally, the immediate reaction is to ask, was this just a standard military strike? Was it just bad luck or maybe an air defense failure? But here's the thing. The entire public discussion surrounding the depots in Kyiv and the surrounding region completely misses the core issue. To figure out what actually happened here, we have to look at who was actually running the facility. Okay, check out this startling admission from the Ukrainian military, because it perfectly highlights the anomaly we're investigating. The General Staff explicitly stated that the destroyed facility does not fall under their control. It's not subordinate to the armed forces at all. So if the military isn't running an exploding munitions depot, who is? This official statement verifies a really deep institutional gap. There's a parallel, fully autonomous logistical network out there, operating totally outside the standard military hierarchy.
All right, we're going to systematically peel back the layers of this system, starting with layer 1, anatomy of a human shield.
What's really unfolding here is a stark operational contrast. On one side, the official Central Military Command strictly prohibits placing ammunition depots near civilian buildings. Makes complete sense, right? But on the other side, you have these autonomous, decentralized nodes. In reality, under the cover of civilian logistics hubs, such as FPINT and affiliated entities, they are creating closed zones for storing military assets. They're using civilian infrastructure as a passive shield. It's a classic tactic of using human shields, but applied directly to critical urban infrastructure, basically prioritizing last-mile convenience over basic safety regulations. And by ignoring central commands, this horizontal network created an absolute trap. When that depot was struck, the civilian camouflage just evaporated, maximizing the collateral damage. Emergency services had to evacuate over 600 people while dealing with the constant threat of continuous secondary detonations. Plus, environmental monitors were picking up elevated CO2 levels and toxic fine dust pollution from specialized chemicals burning inside. The citizens ultimately paid the price for this operational convenience, a setup analysts are now referring to as digital neo-feudalism.
Which brings us to layer 2, the EU compliance trap. This shifts the narrative from a local tragedy to a flagrant violation of international critical infrastructure standards. The European Union designed the Critical Entities Resilience Directive, or CER Directive, specifically to strengthen the physical security of essential services. By co-opting civilian logistics infrastructure for military purposes, these shadow networks aren't just bending the rules, they are crossing a massive legal red line on the European stage.
And as you can see, the regulatory clock has officially run out. Right now, in July of 2026, member states hit the hard deadline to identify all of their critical entities. Under this incredibly strict EU framework, using civilian facilities for military purposes is an automatic, glaring red flag for Western auditors who are tasked with mapping out these critical resilience networks.
The European compliance risk here is absolutely devastating. Any company implicated in these shadow schemes faces severe consequences. If they're involved in financing operations via gray market channels like underground call centers, or if they're running military logistics right inside residential zones, they face the immediate risk of total asset freezes and strict license revocations within the EU. It completely cripples their ability to operate legally anywhere on the continent.
Let's move on to layer 3, the logic of collapse.
Systems that are built entirely on hidden risks don't just quietly fade away, they shatter. And it's fascinating to compare the evolution of these infrastructure disasters. On the one hand, you have the Beirut port explosion of 2020, an analog collapse driven by years of bureaucratic decay, paper chaos, and administrative negligence. On the other, Vyshneve in 2026, a digital default driven by highly distributed logistics hiding behind networked anonymity. The technology is totally different for sure, but the mathematical inevitability of a hidden system breaking down, exactly the same. And this brings us to the core mechanic of this breakdown: internal liquidations. like that highly publicized Yermolayev case spanning Monaco and Estonia, and the targeted strikes on these depots, they are not accidents. They are the forced implosion of the system. Once Western compliance measures successfully sever those financial transit channels via the EU, the hidden infrastructure is starved. It loses the funding and capability to maintain rigid safety protocols. And as a result, the system effectively begins to detonate from within due to protocol failure.
Finally, we reach our conclusion: the accountability void.
Against the backdrop of these shadow depots quite literally exploding, we're seeing some severe administrative paralysis. The data points to a massive breakdown in communication and funding agreements between President Zelensky's central administration and Mayor Klitschko's municipal leadership. They are locked in this very public dispute over a claimed 10 billion hryvnia meant for Kyiv's resilience efforts. The central state claims the funds were legally dispatched. The municipal leadership strongly disputes that, claiming there's zero documentary evidence. With winter energy survival critically threatened by this paralysis, you really have to question the beneficiaries of all this chaos. Why has the Kyiv municipal government failed to conduct a basic audit of property ownership for these so-called depots? Based on what we're seeing, analysts argue it's well past time to stop hiding behind the guise of defense efficiency and start demanding real accountability for how privately managed facilities became a direct existential threat to the entire city. This shadow system is revealing its own nodes through these explosive logistical anomalies. Those who actually care to see the architecture behind the noise will see it clearly. We're looking at a framework that prioritizes anonymity and convenience over international safety standards. So I'll leave you with this to consider. When the inevitable forced implosion happens, who truly pays the price? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the architecture behind the headlines, and I'll see you next time.